This conference will
Okay.
now be recorded.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Muhammad Adil, Veeam User Group Egypt leader and Veeam Vanguard. Today, another session with VUG Egypt, and this is special in technicality and special as we have special guest Jeff. Thank you for joining. Today, we are talking about an interesting topic. Actually, it's interesting because I'm interested in the object first, actually. But I believe everyone joining is will be interesting also. So I will let Jeff to introduce himself.
Okay,
So
sure.
over to you,
And
Jeff.
yep, I see is my camera still on, or because I can't see myself anymore? Someone maybe muted me.
Uh, it's off now.
Yeah, because it is on, but anyways, let me just double check. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so while I'm oh, I muted it. It must be a key combination. One second. Oh, it won't let me. Uh, anyways, but I'm not going to waste some more time. I'll turn myself on soon. I mean, you didn't come here to see me, but in a short kind of description of who I am, I'm a Veeam Vanguard and a Veeam Legend. I have, oh, there we go. I think it's fine. I have been doing IT for 20 years, more than 20 years, but I like to say 20 years because when it hit 20, I thought, wait a minute, maybe I'll just say 20 and I won't say anymore. Um,
Okay.
13 years I've been doing data protection. And I first started with a Canadian, so I'm based in Toronto, Canada, a Canadian service provider, and we use Tivoli Storage Manager to back up over the internet clients. So that was my first interaction with backup over the internet. Then we introduced Tivoli Storage Manager Fastback, which where we actually have appliances in customer environments, and there was a DR setup. And then, of course, virtualization hit big time. And I remember my boss gave me uh, a job to find something to use to back up. And I remember I tested three things: Tivoli for virtual environments, which was, I think you need a PhD to be able to get that to work. vRanger, which seemed okay, but then there was Veeam. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is because we would put these into customer environments and the customers didn't have time to learn them. So they didn't want something too complicated because they don't have time to learn it, but they also don't want a black box in there. They don't know what it's doing. So Veeam was perfect because any administrator with some IT experience felt comfortable. They could go in and say, okay, I get it, kind of thing. So it was a beautiful product, and things exploded. My career exploded, and in a good way. They introduced Cloud Connect. That was beautiful. And we had a turnkey solution whereby we would put an appliance in the customer environment. We'd run and manage their backups locally. And then we'd send the backups offsite to Cloud Connect. Okay, so I worked with a service provider for a long time, then a second Canadian service provider, then a VASP. And then I got an offer from Object First saying that they wanted to create a community and have a community manager. And when I heard that there'd be no more severity one calls at 2 in the morning, I said, yes, that's for me. Um, I've been doing that a long time. And as a lot of you are aware, it's a thankless job sometimes in IT. When things are working, they don't notice you. And when things aren't, they phone you. So this job basically is running the community of what we call the Object First ACEs, primary task of my job. And then I'm also involved in marketing somewhat and showing technology off, but trying to focus more on the technical side and not the advertising. So today I wanted to talk to you a bit about Object First. For me, it's a great position. I love it. I love the people. There are a lot of former Veemers here, and I'll talk about something special about Object First in a second in relation to Veeam. So I'll bring up my slide deck and I'll attempt to share in this. There we go. Share desktop version. Okay, so I'm going to share a window. Okay, tell me if you can see that.
Yes, I can see it now.
Excellent. Okay,
Yeah.
so I got the shirt too. I put that on. Swag. I love swag. So Object First, called the best storage for Veeam, and in my opinion, that's not just a marketing thing. Like the best chewing gum or something like that. And I'll explain why. And it's a lot of this is from my own experience. So we're Veeam ready, object immutability ready, and we're ready object. So those are the Veeam stamps that prove that you've done tests or they've done tests that prove that your solution Veeam accepts. And that is very important. I'll talk about that in a second as well. Okay, so why is it special? Well, one of the reasons is the founders of Object First are the original founders and owners of Veeam. So Ratmir Timoshev and Andrei Baronov, they founded Veeam. They brought it to its enormous success. And then just a few years ago, they sold it. And the question was this. I mean, when you sell a company like Veeam, when it's so successful, I always think maybe I'll just go and live on an island and just, watch football all day long and soccer and enjoy myself. But they never, I mean, they left Veeam, but Veeam is very close to their hearts because it was such a great success for them. And what they wanted to do was to help Veeam in an area which all software vendors, especially backup vendors, are having difficulty with. And this is with the emergence of ransomware and malware. It's a very difficult problem, and they felt that they need to get involved in this as well. And hence they decided to go into a totally different area, object storage, an object storage appliance. Their goal was to deliver the best storage for Veeam. Now they know Veeam because they founded Veeam and ran it. So they wanted it specifically to be the best storage for Veeam because object storage, of course, it's been around for a long time. I'll say that. A lot of people don't realize it. Object storage emerged in the late 90s, 1990s, and it was for compliance reasons because if I remember correctly, the metadata is so good you can, the versioning, whatnot, it's great for compliance purposes. Now, it was Amazon that really made it super popular in the general world with S3, but it's been around for a long time. They wanted, of course, to create ransomware proof, immutable out-of-the-box storage. So they didn't want, they know their customer base, and they know that a lot of people, their primary task is something else, and backup they have to do as an extra. And they don't want these people to have to be forced to become super experts because some people just won't have time. And in the threats that exist now, that's not enough. So they wanted an appliance where it'd be simple. You just plug it in, and it's immutable out of the box. And the third thing, which I'm going to talk about in more depth, is zero trust data resilience. And this is a new concept which has emerged from an old concept. In my next slide, we'll talk about that. So zero trust you've probably heard about. It's been in networking for a long time, and it's precisely that, zero trust. There are a few principles of it which are very important. One is assume breach. So you don't just think, oh, I'm going to be safe forever. You assume you're going to be breached. You segment access, minimize attack surface and blast radius. In data protection terms, that would be, okay, if you're hit, what is going to get destroyed? What will get encrypted? You verify explicitly. So this, I think everyone's aware of now. You're going to use IAM, and you're going to use multi-factor authentication as much as you possibly can. And an age-old thing in the Linux and Unix world, of course, and also now in Microsoft world, is to use least privilege access, okay? You don't want the junior person who's just been hired in your company to be given root or administrator, right? Because you know what they're going to do. Certainly, I wouldn't give myself that access when I was 20 years old. In fact, I don't give myself that access when I was 30. But now probably I would. Okay, so that was zero trust. But if you read the zero trust documentation, you'll notice that backup wasn't mentioned. And when you think about it, it's kind of strange, especially for me, because having worked, so to speak, in the trenches for many years, it was the backup that often saved a company. All the other defenses got broken down eventually, and it was restoring from backup, which kept the company going or didn't. Now, luckily, I never had an or didn't situation. There were some close moments, not through our fault, just because attacks are always getting better. So what has happened now, what Veeam has done, they've taken the zero trust principles and they've applied them to data protection, okay? And they've made this term called zero trust data resilience, okay? That's a bit of marketing, but you understand what they mean. And it's extending the zero trust principles to enterprise data backup and recovery. So the same principles we talked about on the other slide, we're going to apply now to data protection. You're going to segmentation of backup and software and backup storage. So as an example, in my example, we used to give an appliance to a customer and they'd send to Cloud Connect. And that appliance was a Windows box and a second drive with NTFS or later REFS to get the fast cloning. And when the first times I started to see ransomware, we get these phone calls saying, we have a problem. All of our servers are encrypted, including the Veeam server. And guess what? The storage is on the Veeam server and it's Windows NTFS REFS is encrypted. Boom. Now, they had Cloud Connect to protect them. Sometimes we had tape, but nevertheless, that was a first time where I kind of understood that it's not a good idea to put all your eggs in one basket, okay? Well, minimize attack surface and blast radius. Then there's the multiple resilience zones. And if you've studied Veeam or studied for any exams, you'll know the 3-2-1 rule, which has actually been extended even more, but the basic 3-2-1 rule, which has been around, it actually came from photography, by the way, I didn't know that until recently, is that you have 3 copies of your data. One's production, one's a backup, and the other one's a copy of your backup on 2 different media, okay? And that can also mean different media in the cloud, like on a cloud, different media from your local media, could mean tape, and 1 offsite. That last one is extremely important because when I first started data protection, we were just doing offsite only with Tivoli, then we had local only, and then we combined things. Nowadays, you cannot afford to only have 1 copy on site. It's extremely risky. And a newer concept that is coming recently is to have immutable backup storage. So all of these ransomware cases, which emerged, and the problem with the whole ransomware situation is that the people doing this are not dumb. They're smart and they get better. So when I first encountered ransomware, it was of a customer locally, and we were able to restore them on the cloud. Fast forward a year or two, and suddenly the hackers knew to get in the box, to encrypt the data, but to also use the API calls to delete all the Cloud Connect backups. Now, in that case, they had archiving, so we were saved. That was the first time we saw that. Veeam developed on Cloud Connect something called insider protection. It was called insider protection mainly to protect from admins who are angry and let's delete everything and I'm leaving. But the idea is that if somebody from the local location deletes the backup in the Cloud Connect, it doesn't go to deletion right away. It goes to a invisible hidden recycle bin, which only the service provider can see. Fast forward sometime forward, and whoever's monitoring Veeam or studying, and maybe they're taking the exams, reduces the retention locally first, then runs a Cloud Connect, then encrypts, and eventually the things inside the insider box are also encrypted or gone. So what I'm trying to show you is there's a constant evolution of attack, and there has to be a constant evolution of defense. And so immutable backup storage was the solution to fix that. If it's immutable, even I cannot delete it. Even the administrator can't delete it. So if I can't delete it and the administrator can't delete it, the hacker can't delete it. So that's zero trust data resilience. Okay, if we go back in time or even to look at what we have in a normal situation of backup and different solutions. So I won't say go back in time. That's another slide I had where I show old protocols, but this is like a modern situation now. So showing the separation of software and backup. Very simple. You've got your physical, your virtual, even your cloud workloads. And here are the protocols that are being used to go into the proxy agents or the backup server, okay? And then in our case, it goes into OOTBI, okay? OOTBI, by the way, stands for out of the box immutability, right? People are asking, what is OOTBI? So that's the name for that. But what you see here is the attack surface on the backup software layer is quite large. All these protocols that are being let in are potential attack surfaces. So in compliance with ZTDR, we have a minimal attack surface here, only S3 coming in, and there's zero access to root and the operating system, okay? And in this case, we have an OOTBI here, but we can also have an OOTBI, a secondary data center, a service provider could have an OOTBI, or you can use AWS, Backblaze, Wasabi in the 3-2-1 rule. So this is your offsite. In this case here, it's a capacity tier, but you could just have a local repository and use backup copy jobs to go offsite as well. So keep that in mind. So this is the separation, the segmentation. Each area is separated. So if an attacker gets in here, that's great. They're not going to do anything. And even if they send commands, delete, they won't work. It's immutable. Okay. So the vision that Ratmir and Andre wanted was something that was secure, powerful, and simple. Okay. So they didn't want to make any compromises. The big problem today, all the time, my whole existence in working in IT, is that you have to get things done, and so sometimes you have to compromise. And I think what everyone understands now is that when it comes to The storage of your backups is one area where you don't want to compromise, where you don't want to take shortcuts. I mean, if you're going to play with proxies and have a lower number or something like that, that's fine in other areas. But the location of your stored backups is the most important, because if you lose that or it gets encrypted, you've lost everything. At the same time, you don't want to lose power. You don't want it to be extremely complicated because you just don't have time to do this. One other problem with security is when it's overly complicated or time consuming, it doesn't get done. All right, so Veeam customer options for on-prem storage. And I have dealt with every single one of these in my career. So originally the direct access storage, good example was my REFS, NTFS repositories on the local Veeam server. The big problem here is not secure. It can be simple and powerful, but it wasn't secure. Now I've read there's some add-ons you can put on to try to make some kind of immutability, but again, you don't want to do anything which would be a shortcut or not completely officially accepted in the security world as being secure. So that really isn't a secure solution nowadays. You could also have NAS backups. They weren't as powerful. So dedupe appliances, I've dealt with those as well. Secure the question mark, because vendors will say it's secure. Sometimes it's hard to prove that. And so it's a question mark. Not simple, because if you're setting up a dedupe appliance, and I've done them, you have to tweak the jobs. You can't just create a Veeam job and run it on a dedupe appliance. I mean, you can, but it will not work as well as it should. You have to do things like turn off the dedupe in the Veeam job. I used to, when I did it before, you'd have to do active fulls once a week or things like that. Powerful, again, question mark, it depends on the appliance and the vendor. The Veeam hardened repository. So it used to be called the Linux hardened repository. Now it's called the Veeam hardened repository. This is an interesting one, because at the look of it, it looks like a great solution. I've installed them and used them, and it is, but there are some excepts, let's say question marks. So if you're doing the do-it-yourself hardened Linux repository, secure becomes a question mark only for one reason. You can follow the instructions, set it up. The question mark about security comes on day 2 and later, because you have to maintain it. As I said before, attack is always evolving. It's always present. There are new exploits every day, new vulnerabilities. So if you're going to run that, if you're talking about the do-it-yourself Veeam hardened repository, you or someone on your team has to be watching that. Preferably, if it's a big organization, it would be a security team watching for exploits and phoning up the backup people saying, hey, folks, there's a new secure shell exploit. Are you sure that secure shell's turned off? Or there's a new other problem, have you patched the servers? You need to patch the servers. So this is going to cause more work. I know for a fact when I was working in service provider and other IT jobs, the one thing I didn't have was free time. I was always being engaged. My manager thought that, if I wasn't working, I was just, looking out the window. So my manager made sure I was always busy. So the problem is the responsibility is completely on you, and you can't say, well, I was busy that week, so I didn't do the patch, and then we got hacked. That's the worry there. So simple, it depends. If you have Linux expertise and you've worked with Linux, it's going to be simple. If you haven't, you're a good admin, you can probably follow the instructions, set it up. But I wouldn't call it simple in that sense. Powerful, yes, depending on what you use for the storage. Okay, now we get to OOTBI, Object First Storage. So it's immutable out of the box. Okay, it's simple in the sense you don't need to know anything about security, and you don't have to worry about the exploits and vulnerabilities, because that's all being handled by Object First. And it's very powerful for a number of reasons. One, because it was specifically built for Veeam, and Veeam has a best practice. They want you to use 1 megabyte blocks. A lot of object storage can't do that, or can do it, but runs into problems because of a lot of API calls. And I'll talk about that in a second. Also, Veeam have introduced a new, it's not really an extension to the protocol. I guess you'd call it an extension protocol, but it's called the SOS API, the it uses smart entities, smart objects, smart entities. And this helps enormously with backing up to object storage. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but one thing I'll tell you right off the bat that it solves is, and it's a simple thing, but capacity. So when I first introduced capacity tier, when it arrived with object storage, I put it on, and it was only moved at that point. So if you know Veeam, Now you can copy right away to capacity tier from a scale out repository, or you can move. Well, it used to be at the beginning you could only move, and it would save a lot of space on your local repository, which was great, except that accounts came and said, okay, Jeff, great. How much is in your capacity tier? And this was multi-tenant. And guess what? The standard S3 protocol doesn't tell you that. So it was like, well, let me guess. So that was a problem. So one of the things that SOS API does, it gives you capacity. And so you'll see in your Veeam console now, if SOS API is turned on and if the object vendor supports it, you will see how much you have there. It's important. But it also does some other things I'll talk about in a bit. Okay, this is just a general slide about it's secure, it's out of the box, reminder, immutability, zero access to root. So 15 minutes deploy and scale. We've timed this with customers, even lazy ones who go for breaks. No, there's no lazy customers, but literally if you work rather diligently, you can have it racked ready and have backups running in 15 minutes. There's nothing you need to do extra. Powerful, so you can get up to 4 gigabytes per second, okay? The supercharged instant recovery, the supercharged is obviously a marketing term, but the instant recovery obviously is very powerful and fast as well. Ransomware proof. Repeat that again. Okay, so backup software is here. How does it work? It goes to the primary data center here in this case, out of the box immutability. You get excellent instant recovery speeds, which are very important. So people will ask sometimes, well, why don't I just use something in my data center, like remote data center? Okay, but what's your link? Remember, instant recovery, which is being leveraged more and more nowadays, you have to be able to do it quickly. Okay, and a secondary target is, as I said before, important, and you could have an object first there, but obviously you can use AWS, Azure, Wasabi, Backblaze, and you can use that for longer retention as well. Okay, so why object first storage? I'm kind of repeating myself, but that's the marketing rule. So it's S3 native object lock, by the way. When we talk about immutability, so how is it doing it? It's using the S3 native object lock. So nothing's being invented here. This is all a known capability. Scalability, simplified. It's got horizontal scalability, up to date, no limitations of traditional file systems. So traditional file systems, you run into all sorts of limitations. Object storage does not have that. Guaranteed data delivery, and it natively solves the required the needs for required 321. Okay, quick right there. So you have your file storage there, block storage, and that was object storage. Okay, so let's talk more again about OOTBI. Hardened Linux OS with no root operating system backend access. So you cannot access the command line. If there's a major problem which needs some kind of access to the operating system, you have to phone support, and there has to be a whole method of communication and verification before support can get in there and help you out. Secure by default, so it's leveraging the native S3 object lock, running in compliance mode. Okay, now this is important. In object immutability, there are 2 modes. There's compliance mode and there's governance mode. And what is the difference? Governance mode means that you cannot change or delete the backups. The administrator can't do it. Nobody can do it. The challenge there is you have to be careful when you're doing your sizing. You have to understand how much this is going to really be, and we have Object First sales engineers who can help our customers determine that. Because if you make a mistake, you're going to fill up your any of your S3 anywhere that you're using very quickly. Governance mode allows a super user to actually delete data. Now, you might say that's a compromise, Jeff. You said never do compromises. Yes, I would not. However, let's take a service provider. If you're a service provider and you've got 1 million tenants and some of them don't pay the bill or they leave, if you're in compliance mode and you've got on one area a bunch of tenants, you can't delete it. You'd have to wipe the disk. So governance mode would allow a service provider administrator to go in and delete. But let's face it, it is a little bit of a lowering in the security, because if the service provider's environment gets hacked, gets compromised, then there's nothing stopping them from going and deleting. So one thing you want to keep in mind. Multi-factor authentication, I think we know that everywhere now. Everything we do now, we have to multi-factor. Very important as well, and I think now everyone's doing it. When I was the service provider, some customers said, I don't want to bother. Encryption. So you want to use Veeam encryption on your backups. You want to make certain that your backups are encrypted at rest, okay? Because breaking into a system that's going to happen. It's an assumed breach, right? But if the backups are encrypted, there's nothing they can do with them. So they can steal your S3, or they could break in somewhere. If it's encrypted, they can't do much with it. That combined with immutability provide an unbreakable survivability from data breaches. Okay, so here you see a little screenshot of how you create a new bucket in the UI. So Object First lets you into a UI where you get a basic screen and you can do some things, but limited. And this is one of the things when you create a backup, and you see versioning is enabled by default. Okay, so configuring OOTBI is simple. You can configure OOTBI through a TUI or accessible via IPMI or keyboard and monitor. It's going to use the standardized Veeam's default 1 megabyte block size. It's very important. That's why you can just plug it in and run it, because that's what Veeam wants you to use. Now, you will see conversations out there, people saying, well, I'm using this vendor, they can't do that, so we're just going to raise the size to 4 megabytes. The problem with that is you're going to quadruple or double the size of your backups, okay? And the reason why Veeam don't want to recommend doing that and say this is the best practice is because let's take their point of view. Let's say they go into a POC against another competitor and they want Veeam to perform the best it possibly can. Well, then it should be using the 1 megabyte. The fact that the storage can't do that is not Veeam's problem. So they want Veeam to do that. And that's why they set that as a recommendation. If you want to understand why it does the extra amount of backup so much, and some people set it to 8 megabytes, but I've seen that. A 1 megabyte block, if you're doing, for instance, incremental backups, and a lot of times you will have, for a block, you won't have the full amount. So you'll have, let's say, 256K, okay? But it has to use the 1 megabyte no matter what, okay? So if you've set to 4 megabytes and you've only got 256K in that block, it's still going to use 4 megabytes. So instead of using the 1, it's going to use 4. And over a backup chain, you can imagine how often that might happen, you know, at the end of a chain or whatever. So that grows enormously. Okay, so we also have linear scalability and cluster auto balancing, and no namespace modifications required. That's S3 stuff. Naming conventions, when you create a new bucket, it has to be between 3 and 63 characters long. I don't know, who would want to name a bucket 63 characters long. I know people sometimes think that might confuse a hacker. It probably confuse the person trying to deal with this.
Yeah,
And
it's for security reasons, yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes.
I know you're a security expert, but I mean, 63, I think that's going, uber secure. But and then there's some other things here. None of this should be, a shock or anything to people, because we see that everywhere now. Okay, so OOTBI powerful, 1 gigabit ingestion per node. So if you have a 4-node cluster, you're going to get 4 gigabytes per second. 500, 600 megas recovery speed per node, 20 instant recovery VMs per node. So the 20 instant recoveries at the same time, those were workloads that weren't obviously all huge SQL servers with millions of transactions. Keep that in mind. No database bottlenecks. Why is that important? Because some vendors, you have to keep in mind, it's not a question of being bad or good. It's some S3 vendors are selling for everything. So they're selling for, storage of huge video files or storage of just archives, and they're also doing it for Veeam. So they have to build their solution which will satisfy all those areas, right? So that 1 megabyte is one of the problems, because Veeam is different from, let's just say, taking a file and sticking it on S3 and leaving it there. Veeam does a lot of API calls, okay? So it's constantly having to go and check the object lock, remove locks, put them back on, all sorts of stuff during the backup. This puts enormous stress on an S3 if it is leveraging a database, for instance, or erasure coding. So erasure coding is great, but Veeam already say you should be using 3-2-1 for resiliency, right? 3-2-1. Erasure coding is a good extra, but remember, every time you send something up, it has to go through all of its erasure coding, and it's a lot of extra traffic. So that does hit performance a bit. And that's the metadata issue. So no network traffic hops, there's no unnecessary hops, it's direct. What's in your box? Okay, from the hardware side of things, NVMe flash cache, RAID 6 array, 10 disks, 1 spare, dual NICs, 10 gigabits per second. And you have hard Linux OS with mirrored RAID. SOS API. So this is what Veeam introduced in Veeam 12 and forwards. And I already talked about the capacity space visibility, but the storage integration without plugin requirements is even more important. And what does that mean? So for instance, Veeam with SOS API is aware of the location of the backups. So if you have a 4-node OOTBI cluster, for instance, and your backup is taking place and it is placing things on different nodes, when Veeam goes to recover, for instance, it'll know that part is on this node and go directly to it. So it doesn't have to query a database or anything like that, which takes up extra cycles and creates a big hit on performance. SOS API helps with load balancing during the backup as well, where to place things. It monitors what's being used too much at a certain time and will choose. So it's basically load balancing as well. And of course, the space visibility, very important there. You can actually read about SOS API. There's a lot of documentation on Veeam, but it is truly revolutionary from the point of view of S3. And what's important too, it's not some kind of a injection into the protocol. They didn't want to change and make some kind of a proprietary new protocol on top of S3. These are extensions, right? So the S3 API commands are all the same. This is just an extension on top of that. So there's caching. The caching control is exposed to Veeam as well. So the caching in the OOTBI SOS API, Veeam knows about that. So it can break large jobs into so-called smart entities for smart placement. So give an example, if you have a backup job with, let's say, 50 VMs, in that case, each VM will be considered a smart entity, okay? And if you have a scale out, it can place that entity, smart entity, on one of the extents, and it'll know which one it's on. So if you want to instant restore that VM only, there'll be no time wasted. Where is it? Where are the pieces? I need to collect some erasure coding, or I need to query the DB a million times. No, right away, SOS API knows it's there and it grabs it. So that's a huge increase in speed. Storage managed network access and load balancing, I said before. So what are smart entities? I kind of described that a bit. A Veeam backup construct ingested via the SOS API for object storage. That's the kind of scientific description. So it helps, in a nutshell, helps direct placement of data and load balance concurrent streams. So how do they work? Veeam communicates with the SOS accelerated repository, sharing data and client details. Node allocation, the repository guides Veeam on which node to send each smart entity. So again, if this node has too much or is overworked, it'll be told to go to another node. Network optimization provides direct access for data streams to spread across all of the NICs, boosting throughput. Okay, so how does OOTBI work? You've got your production here. You got physical, virtual workloads, cloud, and then your Veeam or M365. SOS management takes place in this case, so it talks to Veeam, Veeam knows, and then accelerated through SOS, it goes to the backup proxy or a gateway, as you know, or might not know. With S3, you can either use a direct mode or gateway mode. And you might ask, well, what's the difference? Well, at times, gateway mode might be better because you can have a lot of gateways, whereas direct mode actually needs the mount server, and you can only have one mount server for a repository. So we haven't seen it too often, but you can also leverage gateway servers for that purpose as well. M365. So one caveat with M365 is that M365 doesn't yet support SOS API. So Veeam are introducing SOS API gradually. It's a big job. Main Veeam components are covered. Plugins aren't yet. So enterprise plugins aren't yet, and Office 365 aren't yet as well. I hear, hopefully soon, they will be coming. Okay, and then you send your VMs there. Fine. Okay, you start to run out of space. What happens? You add a new node. Automatically, this will be load balanced on our side. Okay. Again, you're running out of space. So you saw the number before was 192 box. You run out of space, add more, got 384. This spreads out. Same thing. You need another one. Again, it's going to move the smart entities across to the new node, depending to try to balance things out. So I remember when I was a service provider, we kept asking for rebalancing of sobers, and it finally came in the end, but I already left the service provider. But that was a big problem, is that, you'd have one extent that would get overloaded and you're kind of stuck having to move things around manually, which wasn't much fun. Finally, we add another node here, and you have 768 terabytes at this point in time, and everything has been totally rebalanced. Okay, so here's the present family, and I'll underscore present because we're always trying to evolve, obviously. There's a 64 terabyte appliance, a 128 terabyte appliance, and a 192 terabyte appliance. You can mix, match, and scale up to 680 terabytes per cluster. So you don't have to have exactly the same thing. I remember when I used to work with vSAN, VMware vSAN, it was you really had to have everything exactly the same. Here, no, you can mix. You could have a 128 and then add a 64 if you need to, and go up to the ultimate 192 for everything if you need. Okay, so what's new with OOTBI? OOTBI can store more data. This is the what's new in the sense since Veeam on, because Veeam on, we had this new release. We support up to 192 terabytes on a single node, and that unlocks up to 768 terabytes, as seen in the previous slide, of usable, immutable backup storage per cluster. So scale, continuous integration with Veeam's 12.12 release. Sober now supports multiple object storage targets as extent. So originally, I think before 12.2, 0.12, they do this Veeam, a 1.22, but before 1.2, you could only have one extent and have SOS API supported, okay? So it would work, you would lose the advantage of SOS API. So you'd have a cluster and you used to have one extent. Now you can have multi-cluster. So you can achieve beyond 3 petabytes of immutable data, immutable object storage with OOTBI in a Sober now. Because of that. Security-wise, we are doing deeper third-party testing and validation. So we haven't changed anything on the API. There's no proprietary stuff there. We get a third-party testing company in. They're testing us, and this will be available. Continued security hardening. We're already watching that. And there's also new support for NTS, time service options, and named admin. So that's something as well. Okay, move on. So this is the kind of big cheer. We're the best storage for Veeam. I believe that. Purposely built for Veeam, secure by default, immutable out of the box, 15 minutes to configure, lightning fast ingest speeds, and supercharged instant recovery. All right, that is my presentation. If you want to know more, you can scan this barcode. Otherwise, I'll hand it back to, I'll be 1 second. I just make sure that I'm not, Mohammed, I'll hand it back to Mohammed for questions and whatnot.
Yes. Thank you for this technical deep session, and actually, you answered most of my questions, but I
Except for
have
the hard ones, right?
yeah, yes, that's right. But I have some time. We're talking about the challenges from your customer perspective. What challenges that to be expected when I move to Object First?
So I think I would say moving to Object First would remove the challenges, first of all, because it's more a case of the challenges of keeping up with the, as AI would say, ever-changing landscape of security. So just taking my career, for instance, when I first started off, we used the NTFS repositories. We didn't think about anything, and then it worked. But it seems almost that over time, the threats they're happening more often, they're evolving quicker. And so I would say, especially for people who are having to do the job, the architects, the Veeam engineers, if I was working now at a company or a service provider and my boss, the CEO, came and said, hey, Jeff, build secure storage, do it, great. I'd say, well, wait a minute, how much am I getting paid for this? And this is a huge risk. Because they're going to say, oh, well, Jeff built it, and whereas I think I've got some talent, whatever, the threats are big and all it takes is one mistake. And so I would probably, say no. I'd say no. I'd either want a team coming in to do this, or I want you to buy something. It's not that I can't do it. It's not that I can't build a Linux hardened repository, or I can't, use some other solution. Do I want this? I'd rather right now put this on someone else's shoulders and I can concentrate on other things. I saw someone asking there about the sales model. So for that,
Yeah.
I think we should take that offline because I've never been in sales, and they say, Jeff, you're a technical person. When it comes to sales, keep your mouth shut because you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, that's the story of my life. But yeah, let's keep that question. If you could put your email address, or if you could private message Mohammed, um, and he'll relay that to me, and I can give the people who know what they're talking about when it sales that information. Yeah. So getting back to what you said, Mohammed, the challenge again here, it's basically you deploy it and it's ready to go and it's powerful. That's what they developed it for. Again, this came from things they saw at Veeam happening. So Veeam saw customers doing it themselves. And let's face it, Veeam for a long time said, hey, we're storage agnostic, use whatever you want, whatever. But then people started getting in trouble and support calls started going up saying, hey, I used what I wanted and guess what? I'm encrypted. What do I do? So this is another reason why Ratmir and Andre came up with this, because they wanted a solution where, okay, you don't have to worry now. Don't worry. And there'll be less support calls for Veeam and basically less people getting hit.
Perfect. Another question about the compliance. If we are talking about highly regulated industries like government or fintech, like I'm working on a fintech, and I'm trying to convince people there about how Object First can ensure the compliance of my data. What's your answer about that?
So I would say two things. So first of all, the tests that are ongoing right now, these third-party security testing, that information will be available, and I believe it'll be available to the public or certainly to customers, and that can be used to show what is needed. The challenge, I think, with government or organizations compliance, where it has to really be dealt with on a country or customer level, is you get all sorts of different compliance rules. So I know for a while, as a service provider, we dealt with the Canadian government sometimes, and they would have certain compliancy rules which differed quite a lot from business compliancy rules. And so I know that we've had questions from, especially from Europe, because Europe has a lot of interesting things happen in the compliance, like GDPR, for instance, NIS2 framework. So we have some white papers. And again, if you're interested, please, through Mohammed, I guess, email address, we have a brand new white paper on the NIS2 framework on ZTDR, and I believe there are other compliance things there. As you know, if compliance gets very deep, and so we have specialist things there. And again, it would have to be for every industry or every country. We could say, okay, yeah, this correlates to that, this to this. I saw another question pop up in the chat, but I can't. It pops up and it goes away.
Yeah, if you are focused, your appliance are focused on only Veeam, or there is a plan to support other backup softwares?
So right now, only Veeam. Again, the reason why they built this appliance was because of Veeam. I don't think Ratmi or Andre were desperate for money after selling Veeam. So it was really an act of wanting to help solve a problem and wanting Veeam to continue to be successful. I guess, it's like if you've worked at a company for a long time, you get kind of emotional about things you built there because it's owned by the company, but you built it, you're proud of it. And I think we've got some of that there. So right at this point in time, it's only for Veeam. And that's why they've concentrated so hard on the SOS API and on fitting everything as perfect as possible to Veeam's requirements. Again, the minute you start to open things up to other things, you might have to start compromising, right? Because you can't please everybody with the same technology being exactly the same. There's gonna be different requirements. So right now, only Veeam.
Okay. Another question about ROI. Is there any measurement about ROI if I transition to Object First?
So for that, you would have to, again, I'd have to forward that question on. Just because that's not my area of specialty, I'd say. I try to be careful because sometimes I answer questions, Jeff, you stick to the actual stuff So again, anything I don't know, or put it this way, I think I might know, but I want to double check. I've learned that moving into marketing.
Yeah.
In my old jobs, when I was the senior system administrator or senior architect, the CEO asked me, I'd tell him whatever, and, okay, Jeff said it, but
It's okay.
so before,
Okay, so
yeah. That's with one appliance. So the 4 is the plus, you have 4 nodes. So on one node, you're going to get the 1. That's a question from Mahmoud there.
Muhammad, yes, Mahmoud, Mahmoud, yeah.
Mohammed.
Okay, so about the future of Object First, if we're talking about the increasing demand of the AI, how can you see Object First in the next 3 to 5 years, for example?
So, yeah, I mean, again, it's difficult to predict things, but here I can say pretty confidently that we're going to try to restrict things, anything extra on the appliance. So going back to ZTDR, one of the important things is to keep the attack surface as minimal as possible. And the minute you introduce any extras in there, so for instance, I'll give you an example. If you introduce Veeam components onto your backup storage, or extra Veeam components, you're opening any extra code in there is going to open things up. AI, yeah, I mean, look, I'm not an expert in AI at all. I've joined the Toronto AI cybersecurity group, and it's fascinating. But from a perspective of just adding something else into the appliance, I see that as a potential threat, right? I mean, if someone got access to AI and say, "Hey, AI, encrypt my data for me," it goes off on the internet and finds a nice piece of ransomware and sticks it in there. I mean, that's a crazy situation. But I think if you're thinking about ZTDR and segmentation, and minimal attack surface, you want to keep things minimal. I mean, I'll remind everyone. I always use this example when Microsoft brought out Core. You remember when Microsoft brought out Core, and the marketing team got think, "Hey, it's wonderful, brand new. We're reducing the attack surface." And I remember there was a Linux expert saying, "Oh, well, wait a minute. 1998, I had my command line Linux. I was reduced, attack surface." But the idea was what they were saying was essentially true. The desktop experience, they call it, you might need it for certain reasons, but if you don't need it, it's a big attack surface you can just release. So I don't think that's going to happen. As far as other things, we definitely have plans. Some are secret. Some are so secret they won't tell me. But it's going to be interesting. I think the one thing everyone agrees upon between all the vendors and Veeam as well is that object storage is really kind of the future. You see it in so many places, but also the fact that threats are going to get worse. So the situation is not going to get worse. And I think that, if anything, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that might be coming in the future. Nothing off the top of my head that I can announce right now, put it that way. So we have access to the presentation recording. Yeah, I think so. I checked with my boss because in marketing, it turns out you have to say, "Can we give this to the public?
Yeah.
Can we show them?" I didn't know that. I used to give all my stuff away. It's like, and if it was the
But
opposition, I just change it and make it the opposite, right?
yeah, but I believe in the recording will be available sooner.
Yeah, the recording. So the
Right.
recording, yeah, definitely. The recording is definitely available.
Yeah,
They put it on. Sophia's very good. She normally puts it on like literally in a week or so.
yeah.
Unless they think that I was so bad, they say, "Well, let's just pretend it never happened." It hasn't happened yet, so.
Okay. Uh, I believe there is no other question from our guests. Okay, I believe that's it. And that was a very deep technical, and I really loved it. And I believe there is a bright future for Object First. How old is Object First actually?
So we only started basically last year. There
Mm.
was obviously a preparatory time when things were being prepared, and it was basically beginning of last year. So this year was kind of the first real steam. In Europe, they just started up recently. We have a lot. By the way, we also have a lot of former Veemers working for us. You'll see in our webinars and whatnot. So where I've seen that face somewhere, and
Yeah.
obviously because I said when we're talking about we're working with Veeam so much, it makes sense to hire experts from Veeam as well because they know what we're talking about. But we also have people from other backup vendors, former backup vendors. My boss is from a totally different vendor who is competing with Veeam. So it's very interesting to hear the perspectives. But the one thing when you talk about the future, again, we have like 5 minutes left. Everyone agrees that the market is huge and will only get bigger because again, there's no real solution out there without just totally freezing your data. And I think that if I was a brand new person in the IT world, just starting my career, I'd really focus on learning object storage, and I would focus a lot on cybersecurity. So another thing interesting that I'm doing and other people are doing is I am now joining cybersecurity groups. I'm doing these cybersecurity exams as well, because cybersecurity, data resilience is one of the reasons. Cybersecurity and backup is now becoming more and more one entity. And it's funny because the mindsets are different. I'll say I went to cybersecurity conference. CompTIA ISO was there in Chicago in March, and they had a discussion about ransomware. These top people from service providers, not Veeam service providers, these were just in general IT service providers, and they talked about everything. And at one point, and it was all protection, and access and RBAC and whatnot. And then one person said, yeah, and if that breaks, you should restore from backup. So I meekly put up my hand because I was new there. I didn't get beaten up. And I said, well, what happens if your backups don't work? And they all looked at me and went, hmm? And I realized that the cybersecurity people and the backup people for a long time were never working together. And so they don't understand that happens, right? Backup is not guaranteed. If you've ever dealt with backup tapes back in the day, when you pull it out, it's all been eaten. So you're seeing a lot more of that. You're seeing the mindsets coming together, more talk. So I've had a lot of conversations with people who are cybersecurity experts and discussing things, and I found a lot of new things. There's a lot of things that as an IT person, especially as a backup administrator, you'll kind of know or intuitively understand, but there are things that I didn't really understand or I didn't realize were so important, for instance, especially with things with postmortems. I've done postmortems, but the extra postmortems that they have to do. So that was interesting. So you're going to see that in the future a lot. And I think I would recommend people to start really cybersecurity and, of course, learning AI prompts. I think we all have to do that.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Just in case.
Okay.
I don't think AI would be as entertaining as I am, though. So that's why I try to make my presentations a little bit more crazy, a little bit out of the box, so they can't copy me. This little Jeff comes on. Object First is wonderful. No, so that's what's going to save us, is what makes us different from AI. I hope.
Okay. I just have one last question about. I believe this is a sales question, but about your expansion in the future, because I'm in the Middle East, and
Yep.
actually, almost no one here already heard about the OOTBI and the Object First. So, is there any future plans to expand?
Definitely. So right now, if you're in the Middle East, you can purchase an OOTBI. I think you have to go through the European for the time being sales. You can, again, if you want to ask about that. And we've actually had someone purchase in the Middle East, believe it or not. But for Middle East, Australia, Asia, the problem is that because we were a startup, they wanted to start as Ratmir and Andre always did with Veeam, it'll be ready when it's ready. They don't want to go nuts and open up. So they want to start, see how it goes, North America, then Europe, then wherever they go next, but step by step. And there's also the simple reason that just staffing, to start up worldwide, you'd have to have a lot of staff and all sorts of systems in place, and that's kind of risky. So, but you'll see it soon. But you can purchase. If you're in Australia, Asia, Middle East, you can still purchase. Just contact us and we can tell you how. But yes, expect Object First in your area of the woods sooner rather than later, believe me. I just don't know the
Yeah,
exact time.
I I believe in one day in the future, every customer, if you have Veeam, and probably you will have an Object First. Yeah.
Hopefully that's the plan. And maybe we give you a T-shirt too. There you go.
Okay, yeah, that's perfect. Okay, I believe there is no question from our guests. Okay, I believe that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
This was
Thank
a
you
real
very much
pleasure,
for your
and thank you
time.
very much. And I love the
Yeah,
Veeam user groups, so keep it up.
yeah. Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you, and have a nice day.
You too.